Yeah, so like Alan was saying, we took this course on mindful awareness and resilience in, in the face of the current climate and ecological crisis that we're facing, which is impacting, really everyone on Earth. But humans are kind of the main corporate of this current crisis that we're dealing with. So here is a graphic. Let me move this out of the way. Um, so here's a graphic for the past. So I couldn't find the information up to now until this current month. But here, you get the general idea from last year, from June 2023, to this, current March 2024 of this year, just recently. And really, that's really a continuing trend that we're seeing. I guess this past month and June, parts of the Southern Hemisphere, so Argentina, and this July and this past June were a little bit cooler than average. But other than that, it's really just been a trend of something like this, a picture like this, for the past months. So it's been a year really that the Earth has been above average, and it started last year, June 2023, and you could see, it's been getting hotter and hotter in both the sea surface temperatures and the land temperatures as well. By the way, if you don't follow Scott Duncan WX, he's on Instagram, on Facebook, and Twitter. He has amazing pictures. Like, he posts a lot of this data, and it's very visually appealing. So it's very easy for people to see. Kind of, the red is the heat content in the world, and then the blue is obviously the cooler than average. So you should follow him. Um, the increasingly negative effects of climate change. So again, 2023 was the warmest year on record by a record margin. And, this is the global surface temperature sorry about that, from 1901 to 2000. This was the land was 8.5 centigrades and the sea was 16.1 centigrades. And when you combine those, that's the 13.9. That's the average consensus of both temperatures. And you can see how, from the 1980s, really, yeah, I mean, this wasn't too much. But in the 1980s, you can see that things really started to take off. And this, if we were to put 2024, it's going to be higher than that, even higher. So, yeah. So compared to the 20th century average, really, we are, much above average. And this past year was 1.18 centigrades above that average. So temperatures continue to warm each and every year, and all you have to do is go outside and feel it. Really, wherever you are, you can feel that the summers are getting a lot hotter, more heat waves. I'm in the Western United States, and we're expecting another heat wave this week, which is like, I don't know, the 5th or the 6th this summer. And it's very unusual for Denver to have so many 100-degree temperatures, and they're expecting more 100-degree temperatures this week in Denver. So here's a graphic that I put together in climate change and the impact on human life and health. And some of you might be very aware of this, but it's still something important to remind people. So while everyone is exposed to climate-related health threats, not everyone will experience the same effects. Obviously, it depends on demographics, it depends on geographical area where you are. Some areas obviously are going to have more, effects from climate change than others. People that have greater exposure to climate-related hazards and live in more vulnerable areas will experience more significant climate and environmental impacts. Some people might be more naturally more sensitive to the effects of climate stressors. So we're calling this eco-anxiety. And that just means that you have an increased anxiety or tension as a result of the climate crisis, and and all the conversations and dialogues that people continue to have. And there's a lot, I'm one of them. I do feel this climate eco anxiety. So I definitely am sensitive to it. Their own present state of health, physically and mentally, and well-being is significantly compromised by climate change. So people with asthma and breathing problems are, continuing to see that getting worse throughout the years. And they do not have sufficient capacity or resources to cope or remove themselves from harm. Okay. So here's a graphic as well that I find very interesting. And this comes different strategies that we can use and different obviously impacts and effects from direct effects from climate change. So again, increased global temperatures, extreme weather and disasters, precipitation extremes, sea level rise, changes in land use and growing seasons. And of course, as a result of that, climate change, we're going to continue to see reduced food and water quality, changes in infectious diseases and vector transmissions. Of course, extreme heat is something that is affecting the entire planet, really, in the summertime and even in the winter times. We're seeing, I mean, it's not heat per se, but it is warmer than average temperatures, even in the winter times. We're seeing more record high temperatures in the winter time than record low temperatures. And of course, the health impacts we were talking about, mental and neurological disorders, uh, diseases of zoonotic vector and waterborne diseases, respiratory diseases, and asthma. And then here are some of the interventions that maybe could be, necessary. So know the warning and prepare, prevention or reduction of disease, illness, and injury. Engagement, community engagement, which is what we're doing. Education and awareness raising. So that's something that everyone, I feel like it's very important, especially this last one here, education and awareness raising. I feel like it's our duty, as inhabitants of the planet and as the main really cause for this ongoing crisis that, that we've kind of unleashed in the planet. I feel like it's our duty to continue to raise awareness and educate ourselves. So I thought it was important also to talk about some of these definitions that me and Alan, when we took the course on resilience, psychological resilience and climate change, I thought these terms, they stood out. So climate awareness refers to our understanding and consciousness about climate change. It is a foundation for actionable solutions. It involves recognizing the causes, the risks, and outcomes of climate change and global warming. So again, you want to become aware of your surrounding. You want to become aware of how it's impacting your community, and the world really. And if it's not impacting maybe you personally, I still think you have to be at least have some awareness of the issues. Just a second, please. So yeah, so even if it doesn't affect your family, it's so important to think about how it's affecting other people because we are in it together. Inner or self-transformation. Again, that describes the changes related to people's mindsets. They're made up of their values, beliefs, worldviews, and associated cognitive and emotional capacity. So just basically, understand and become cognizant of of what's happening. And meditation, mindfulness, this is when we can bring mindfulness into this piece, because if you can really contemplate and become aware of the current problems and how it's affecting different species and different biodiverse ecosystems, then you can build that awareness, compassion, and empathy for everyone. In mindfulness, they always tell you, love, peace, and happiness for all sentient beings, right? So that's kind of something that we need to integrate into when we think about climate change and how to help and take action. And we were talking about this, Alan, and he was talking about it earlier. And I mentioned it briefly. So resilience, that's something that, it's something that is going to continue to be thrown out there, especially right now. And as the world continues to, warm, and we continue to see more uh, disasters, unfolding, and more people suffering uh, because of climate change and the ecological uh, effects. So resilience, the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult and challenging experiences. So you having a flexibility to adapt. And that's something that we have to really integrate and talk about a lot when we talk about climate change, because we do have to become flexible with with the climate and the weather, the changing weather conditions, and how it's affecting communities and the world. And of course, adaptability. That's something else that, a lot of researchers are looking at. Because yes, we can come up with solutions to alleviate the current problem, but we still have to think about adaptation as well, and flexibility. And sustainability, sustainable practices that support ecological, human, economic health and vitality. And then this is, I'm sure everyone has heard about this, but the Anthropocene is not quite there yet, but is in a time period. If the geologists come up with this, and yes, and they say this is going to be an epoch of time period, and the humans have contributed directly to the earth. So they have to look at the sediments and the rock formation and evolution of rocks. But for now, we're looking at it, and it is the time period where a single influential species on the planet causing significant global warming and other changes to the land, environment, water, organisms, and the atmosphere. So Europe has already, they're way ahead of us in terms of finding solutions and innovative practices that can alleviate and maybe, correct some of the current ongoing climate and ecological crisis that we're dealing with. And they have they propose this entire framework, if you will, and they have this project that it's ongoing, and of course they're still trying to get more people in, but it's concerned with promoting and enhancing personal and collective well-being. So again, they're trying to get organizations, or trying to get people to think about, reflect, have intuitive, come back to their natural sense. How do you connect with nature? That's why it's called the inner Green Deal. Nature is within, basically. You are part of nature. So building healthy habits through evidence-based methods, which there's a lot of research, and I have the whole reference page after, such as nature-based approaches. So connecting to the grass, connecting to trees, to rivers, to the forest, really whatever gets you connected to the natural world. Mindfulness and compassion practices and habit change exercise, which have shown to contribute to well-being. So again, yes, so mindfulness, building empathy, building compassion, which, Alan and Gus are very good at, and they, this is sort of their expertise. Loving kindness meditation, all of that can be very effective in nourishing and promoting that self-awareness and that connection with nature. And of course, addressing the disconnectedness to nature, the lack of solidarity, and the lack of resilience. So that's very important. So we have to be cognizant and very, very aware of our disconnect with nature. So I think that's something that the Inner Green Deal is really trying to promote and trying to foster in people. More information here about the Inner Green Deal. Again, individual and collective awareness is essential to mitigating and adapting to climate change. So they believe that this is really the key moving forward. We have to obviously take action, everyone. collectively and individually. Again, education systems, including schools, universities, and all professional education have to support these transformative capacities to address the political crisis, the complexity, and just the systemic thinking. So kind of address all these issues integrated in the curriculum, make it parts of schooling, basically. We have to continue to be very aware of that. Again, I apologize for the background noise. Organizations are in a unique position to act as vehicles of individual. So they're very concerned, something that really stood out from the Inner Green Deal project is that they really want to educate large organizations. So there's a lot of organizations, that have over 200 people sometimes employed, and they have these trainings and they, in hopes that they can really start to have dialogues and conversations about how it's affecting everyone. So organizations is something that they're very concerned with, and they have that's kind of their main thing right now. Policy making needs to ensure the systematic mainstreaming and institutionalization of integrative approaches that address the human dimension across all sectors. So again, policymakers, they have to be very much involved. Obviously, individuals maybe don't have as much power, so we have to talk to these larger corporations and the decision makers behind these policies that can in the future change the direction of climate change and how it's continuing to affect the world. So we do need to talk to the politicians and to the stakeholders. We have to hold them accountable. So yeah, you can read more about Lyon Stephan, which she is very much involved in this Inner Green Deal. She's kind of the main driving force. And there's a blog, and I have a whole reference, and I can send it if you're more interested about the current work that she's continuing to do. So here is something that I found. I did some research a little bit more to see what, how we're addressing some of these impacts as well. So again, this is a framework, and they're calling it the Climate Biodiversity Health Framework, which builds on other frameworks that we've had in the past to kind of intersect and interconnect, the climate or food, health, and water supply, energy supply. So that was kind of the previous work that they were looking at, and now they come up with something that's kind of more integrating climate change. So this framework or nexus explores the interconnectedness of climate change, biodiversity, and human health, including mental and physical health. And it basically it's just for policymakers and decision makers to explore ways that we can plan for future sustainable cities and integrate effective and adaptable climate policies. So there's a whole, research that needs to continue to really build on this, because this is very early. I think this publication was just released in 2021, and it's very recent. It's very novice. It's very new. So we have to continue to look at how it's, how this can be further elaborated on, in cities and unique geographical areas. So again, this chart here, this figure just basically explains how everything is connected. So here you have the climate, this bubble up here, and then you have biodiversity here in green, and then health here, and then you can see how everything is just really connected, interconnectedness of everything, how our health is dependent on our climate change mitigation and adaptation, how it's also dependent on biodiversity. Because if we continue to have this habitat lost, and wildlife and, endangered and species endangered and maybe even disappearing really from the planet, extinction of the species, then that, of course, that would also be detrimental to human health. and other species as well. So basically, everything is very interconnected. So this framework is very interesting. So here are some innovative solutions to climate change that, lots of us have seen, but is important to continue to advocate for these and have conversations about it. Fossil fuels in the ground. So I was reading yesterday that they're insisting in a fossil fuels treaty. They want the European Union and a lot of people actually around the world, they want a fossil fuel kind of treaty or agreement law that could, innate this disable companies and these larger corporations from continuing to dig in the ground and continuing to exacerbate the situation, the fossil fuel situation, which is kind of the leading problem really for greenhouse gases and the overall warming and pollution of the world. Invest in renewable energy, so wind, solar, geothermal energy, all of that is very necessary, and there's a lot of work around that as well. We just have to continue to move forward. Electric vehicles is something that also needs to be looked at a little bit closer, because right now, the battery, obviously, it's not very climate friendly. That how it's made, basically the process is still contaminating and polluting. So the best thing is really public transportation. So sustainable and public transportation. Restore nature to absorb more carbon. That's something that they're doing as well. A lot of people are planting trees and continuing to, protect forests and other diverse ecosystems. So again, protect forests and ocean life. It's very important to protect marine life. There's a lot. The ocean is also being affected significantly, actually, by climate change. There's a lot of species that are in danger, and out of extinction. A lot of fish, because of how warm some of the the temperatures are, not just at the surface of the sea, but also like really going down as well. It's been getting much hotter as well. So the ocean content heat temperature has increased significantly. That's why, they're predicting a very high hurricane season in the Atlantic this year because of how warm the oceans are, really. Reduce how much people consume. So consumption is something that is very, a lot of people need to stop consuming so much. They tell you, only buy what's necessary, really. And reduce plastic as well. So with that said, here are the references. I wanted to open up this dialogue and, kind of, if people they have any more ideas, or, if they want to talk about something else, I would like to know some of your kind of ideas and contributions. If you in your community, what kind of work have you done? Or whatever commentary you want to kind of throw out there and talk about. It would be very useful and helpful for everyone. So yeah, I would send it back to you, Alan, or if anyone wants to share.